I'm Cameron Adams, one of the co-founders of Canva and Chief Product Officer there, and I'm here to share my journey with the people here at Entrepreneurs in Conversation. And my biggest business learning is the importance of team.
It's really important for everyone to understand, I guess, sort of your time of your life before, I guess, getting to Canva, because I think there's some really interesting learnings that you can probably share with everyone here. How did the graphic design sort of work its way in while you're studying? Has that always been a passion for you?
Actually, in my high school, at the end of high school, you have to choose which courses you're going to apply for. My first one was law, computer science. My second one was graphic design. Okay. But just never got to the graphic design part. So I've always had an interest in it, but other forces kind of push me in a more academic direction. Once I started the course, I pretty quickly figured out, it wasn't quite my cup of tea. But generally, when you're at university, you don't actually really know what you want to do with your life. So I thought I'd continue on with the course, but have a bit of a graphic design detour as well. So I started working on the school newspaper. That was like my first real interaction with the design team. And off the back of that, I got a part-time job as a graphic designer for software brochures, and did that pretty much throughout all of university.
So then after uni, I know that you did some, contractor work, and then you're also doing another job. So effectively, you're working 1.5 jobs. Once you graduated uni, I mean, how difficult was that to do?
It was definitely an interesting period of my life. One I probably would not want to go back to. Very much a bachelor's life. I woke up at 1 p.m. every day in pajamas and just worked through the day till like 2 a.m. And yeah, somehow I ended up at a contract gig for 2 weeks at Eclipse, which is Deloitte Consulting's web design arm. And that 2 weeks kind of turned into a year. And I totally hadn't planned that. So I was working like 4 days at Eclipse, 4 days in my own business, and not getting much sleep. So yeah, it was an intense period, but I don't know, when you're a freelancer, you just don't really feel like you can turn anything down, particularly when you're running your own business. Anything that comes your way, you kind of have to take for fear that there won't be anything around the corner. So turning down work is a very bad idea and just something you can't really tune yourself out to. How
did you go about, I guess, self-promotion? Because I mean, when you start a business, no one sort of generally knows too much about you or your services or your product offering. What were some of the key steps that you took there that you think might have helped you sort of get well known and start to receive work coming in?
I'd say I was a pretty horrible business person at that stage. Like, I knew nothing about business. I invoiced people and paid GST, and that was about all I knew. So most of the work I came through other people. So doing good work for them, they'd refer me to friends. And also, at the time, I was writing my own blog, which is actually very helpful in hindsight, in sort of getting my name out in technology circles, and becoming known for doing design and technology simultaneously, which helped me get quite a few jobs. And also landed me some book deals, which again kind of put me higher within technical circles and got me a few jobs that way.
Okay, great. And then I guess you're sort of working your way there for a while, and then an opportunity came up with Google. Can you tell us how that came up, and I guess the special project or the secret project that you're actually working on with Google? Yeah,
that was, again, I use the word interesting a lot, but that was really interesting. I'd moved up to Sydney to be with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and simultaneously I got a call from Google, and I'd actually previously interviewed at Google before and not gotten anywhere, so been rejected, not good enough. And I got a call from Lars Rasmussen. Well, not actually him, it was his product manager, Carl. And those two had been working on Google Maps. So if you don't know, the Sydney office in Google is only there because of Google Maps. It was started up because the Maps team was there. And this was about 5 years or so after Maps had been started. So it was, big success. Lars was looking for the next thing to do at Google. And that next thing happened to be a communications project called Google Wave. It was a very secret project. No one inside Google knew about it. Even in the Sydney office, it was kept very secret from everyone else. The team of 3 original people was locked in this boardroom that was entirely blacked out. No one could see inside. It was incredibly sweaty in there. And they were looking for a designer to help them refine the experience of it. And they weren't having any luck. So they got wind of my name and were looking for a contract designer, and that was kind of my backdoor into Google. So I worked on that project for 2 months, helped them get a rough skin around the application, and they took that application to Larry and Sergey in Mountain View and said, "What do you think? Can we get a team for this?" And they were like, "Yep, looks great." And they also said, "Who did the design for it?" And they're like, "Oh, this guy in Sydney." And they're like, "Hire him." So that's how you get into Google with no interview.
Being the only, correct me if I'm wrong here, Cam, but you're the only designer, I guess, with a team of 60 engineers working on this product. All blacked out windows, as you'll say, so pretty secretive. How difficult was that for you, I guess, as a creative person, trying to drive, I guess, design and having these creative elements in there, working with a team of, I don't want to categorise or chastise them too much, but people that are probably a bit black and white and sort of ones and zeros and yes or no type thing. I mean, I'd imagine that being quite a challenge personally, working with this team and trying to achieve, I guess, not only Google's vision for the product Wave, but probably also your own sort of personal touch on that product.
Yeah, it's a challenge on many levels. Just for me as a designer, being very much an engineering company, and also just being in this kind of weird organisational structure. So Wave was set up as a startup within Google, so we didn't actually have a lot of communication with the broader part of Google. And the way the team was set up was entirely controlled by the people on the team. So there was no real broader management structure. It was like a company within a company. So watching that was very interesting. So it was me as one designer, about 50 engineers, 5 product managers, and the 2 founders. And yeah, as a designer, it probably wasn't the greatest environment to be in. Generally, a good split for a designer to engineers is 1 to 5, 1 to 10 at best. Working with 50 people building the product was a bit scary, but strangely enough, I was actually ahead of them. So they were working on the product, and I had a bunch of prototypes to do with features and interface that sort of never got built. And again, that kind of spoke to some of the reasons why the project didn't ultimately end up becoming a success.
And so when the product did come to its end of its sort of, I guess, life cycle, I guess, was that a bit of a pivot point for you, going, okay, well, what do I want to do next? Did you take some time out for reflection, or did you say, no, I want to, work again for like another Google or maybe another product on Google, or were at that point going, no, I want to do another sort of startup by myself?
Yeah, it did take a while to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. It's extremely comfortable at Google. Earning a fairly big salary, getting stock options, they make it very hard for you to leave. And I probably spent about 3 or 4 months figuring out exactly what I wanted to do. Very fortunately at Google, there's not massive pressure for you to roll into another project. Like, you can spend a bit of time figuring out where you're going to fit in best and which part of the company you can add the most value to. So I actually flew to Mountain View. Google Plus was being built at the time, so I helped out on the team there, which is kind of polar opposite the Google Wave, because they had 20 designers all working on the one product with 200 engineers all building it. So that was like massive, and just seeing, I'd never really had experience working with other designers on that level, so working within a team of 20 designers and seeing how they get along and stepping on each other's toes and figuring that out was also a learning experience. Ultimately, Google Plus wasn't something I was that interested in. We ended up starting a small project in Sydney, which was based around search. And again, for various reasons, that didn't quite work out. And that was kind of when I decided, okay, I'm not really into this big company thing. I might go try my hand at something I can build myself.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good lead-in, because I think that's where you started. Fluent, I believe, was at the end of your sort of Google experience. Can you tell us, like, I guess, a bit about what Fluent was about, and maybe some of the successes and maybe learnings, I guess, you had from going through that process as well before, I guess, joining up with and starting Canva? Yeah,
so I think Fluent was probably one of my biggest growth periods, in my career. So it went for about a year. It was me and 2 ex-Googlers, so a couple of guys I'd worked with on the Wave team. And we hadn't learnt the mistake from Wave that you shouldn't really tackle communications. So we went ahead and tackled communications, and this time we tried our hand at email. So instead of replacing email, just making email a little bit better. We had a whole social stream concept and being able to action items from the inbox, just make it really easy to deal with your email. In fact, it kind of has similar echoes to Google's new inbox product, where you kind of triage stuff from the stream. And we built that for about 6 months before really letting it go public. And well, actually, we didn't let it go public. So we were building the product, gradually building up our user base. We had about 50 people on it, trialing it out. And someone introduced us to a journalist at Fairfax. We said, cool, this could be some good promo, and we'll go talk to him and tell him our launch date, and he can, put the article out and be all good. We'll get, ready-made audience. So we went and chatted to him. It was a great interview, gave him our story, ex-Googlers. Every journalists love an ex-Googler story, so if you ever want to start a business, start it with an ex-Googler. And yeah, went away from that feeling really good. 5 days later, got an email from him, and he's like, story's launching tomorrow. We're like, we're totally not ready for this. But it launched anyway. Within a week, we had 60,000 people signed up for our waiting list.
Wow.
We hadn't planned, it was all like free to try the beta. We'd let some friends on and they could visit the homepage and decide whether they wanted to use it. And then, all of Hacker News came onto the product. And yeah, we just totally weren't ready for that. And one of the things we'd learned along the way was how expensive it was to run an email server. So if you want to run an email server just off some Amazon boxes, it costs about $5 per user per month. So putting 60,000 people onto our service would have cost us $300,000 in the first month. Not something you can really afford when you've got a mortgage and family. So along with the hordes of users wanting to use the service, we also got a lot of investor interest. This ranged from bizarre Russian figures just emailing you out of the blue saying they represent a wealthy family to people you've actually heard from TechCrunch and Silicon Valley firms. And we chatted to them a bit, did a few phone conversations, and we thought, okay, this is going to be pretty easy. We've got lots of attention on us, investors are really interested. We're going to go to Silicon Valley for 3 days, talk to these people, sign some deals, come back, keep building the product. We ended up, 2 of us went over. We spent 3 months in San Francisco, just going up and down Sand Hill Road, meeting people, meeting more people, pitching people. We slept in the car in a shopping mall one day. It's just, yeah, the pitching process is insane, and I'm pretty happy I don't have to do it for Canva. But it, again, taught me a vast amount about technology companies and getting investment and the traditional way of startup life. And it was fascinating seeing that insight into what investors think, what they expect out of your company, how to impress them, what they're looking for in an early stage company. But a few deals fell through. You go through this roller coaster of one investor says yes, and then 2 days later they pull out for some bizarre reason. And after a few of those, we just couldn't handle it anymore. So we flew back to Sydney, tail between our legs, and just kind of had to dump the whole Fluent idea. But luckily out of that, I met Mo and Cliff, which was probably even better. Yeah,
so did you want to, I guess, expand on that, Cam? Because I guess that was probably the start of the Canva, story, isn't it?
Yeah, so probably about 3 months, 3 months from the end of Fluent, Lars again put me in contact with these 2 people from Perth. And they're quite young, they're 24 at the time. And I'm like, okay, I'll go chat to these people about why their Flash app is horrible. So I went to go talk to them about their technology stack, and they were interested in creating this design program in the browser that spoke to everyone who wasn't a designer. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a cool idea, but my idea is cooler. I'm going back to do Fluent. But I convinced them that it was possible in HTML5 and they should ditch their Flash app. And that was all well and good. And then, a couple months later, as we were winding up Fluent, their idea kind of stuck in my head, and it's something I've been passionate about for a while, empowering people to be creative, people you wouldn't normally associate with being creatives. So I double backed them and said, hey, how you doing? And they were like, yeah, we need someone to join the team, technically and help us out build this product. So I'm like, great, let's do it together. And that's kind of how Canva started.
Now, with Canva, I mean, you're rattling off some statistics to me, and my mind was sort of just going into overdrive. Because you were saying that there's a design created every second, and I'm not sure whether anyone's actually given much thought as to how many seconds there are in a day, but there's 86,400 seconds in a day. So, there's at least this many designs being created on the Canva application every single day, which is just mind-blowing. I mean, so I guess where we just left off was, you I guess, agreed to start Canva. I mean, how do you go from starting Canva to that sort of traction where you've got a design being created on your platform every second?
It's very simple, Ben. You just build it and then they come. Yeah, it's like, I think you don't really think about that when you're building it. You just have this idea or a product that you want to get out into the world, and you have this vague sense that it could be successful and that it might be useful to people. You're not certain about that, so there's no certainty in any of this. So you build it to the best of your abilities and put it out into the world, and hopefully it receives some attention. We definitely didn't bolt out of the gate and with the darlings of the startup world when we first launched. I think we've learned every time we launch something, you get super excited about the launch, and it feels like 5 million people are going to descend on your product that day. But in reality, that doesn't happen. It's just kind of a very soft splash. Mm-hmm. And then you have to put in the time working on the product and refining the product and figuring out how to get more people to your product. And it slowly grows and slowly adds up until one day you just turn around and it's this crazy number of like 700,000 designs being created a week. And it just quickly gets to these numbers that are just completely mind-boggling. So we'll probably hit 2 million users this week. There's a counter on the screen at work that's counting down. And you just try and think of how many people that is, and like how many football stadiums you'd need to fit that many people, and it just doesn't work. It's really hard to conceptualize these numbers and figure out how to get there, or double that, triple that, keep it going exponentially. But that's part of building a company.
Yeah. So when you started, then, did you have a very detailed business plan about what your marketing strategy was going to be, what your distribution channels were going to be, what was your value proposition, who was your core target audience? I mean, did you give much thought to all those things, or was it mainly about the product going, no, look, we know that we can create this cool product, and because we're going to create this cool product, people will just naturally be attracted to it once they hear about it?
50-50. I'd say, we're very product focused at Canva, and creating a great experience for our users is probably the core of what we want to do. But we definitely didn't go into it blind. Particularly when you're pitching to investors, you have to have a good story about here's how big the market is, here's who we're targeting, here's what your money is going to do for us, and be able to track where you're going to go and what targets you're going to hit. So yeah, we did know what markets we were aiming for. They're kind of guesses still. Like, you don't know that market is going to adopt it. And certainly along the way, we've discovered things that we didn't think about, and markets that we are popular in that we wouldn't have imagined. And you kind of use that data to go forth and grow the company. Yep.
Now, I think the other point worth sharing is, you've grown from a team of 3, I think now to 42 or 50 around there.
It's always hard to keep track of the number. I think we're up to about 46 now.
46. And this is over actually, 3 countries. So this isn't all, in one area we can all work and do quick iteration side by side. So what's some of the challenges you have, I guess, in managing these teams over 3 countries?
Yeah, I think I think the key thing with the startup is that you're always learning and you're always improving. And we can always do remote offices better. We currently have an office in Sydney where most of our engineering is done. We have an office in Manila where a lot of our graphic design and our customer support is done. We also have a small office in San Francisco where our evangelist works from. And it is tricky. We have tried working remotely with individuals before, and it's often hard to keep them in the loop and keep them on track and keep up the communication, because you're dealing with the people in your immediate vision, and there's a lot of people you have to deal with in your immediate vision, so it's very easy to forget the people that you can't see. But particularly with Manila, we try very hard to keep them in the loop and keep them informed and make sure they feel like they're part of the company. Yeah, we're actually bringing them out to Sydney next month so that all the team can finally be in one place and build partnerships and friendships.
Oh, excellent. Now, I think you also mentioned that on Fridays, I think, you know, in your Sydney office, you sort of have a bit of a, I guess, a wind down sort of session. What's the, I guess, intent and purpose behind, you know, holding those sort of events, I guess, with Canva and with the staff there?
Yeah, so I mean, we always try to keep, you know, Canva very friendly and almost like a family. So you got to have as much fun time as you do work time. Well, not equal amounts, bit of fun time. And Fridays is kind of, yeah, definitely a good time to wind down with your colleagues and have a chat about not work and figure out what they do on the weekends and where they hang out with the kids. So on Fridays we actually have a stand-up late in the afternoon. So everyone lets everyone else know what they've done that week, what they've achieved, what they're working on, which is really great to bring together, you know, engineering and marketing and design, and bring them all together so that everyone knows every part of the company and how everyone contributes. So we do that with a few beers, and then afterwards, you know, just dive into the snacks, and yeah, it's quite relaxed. People are free to go home, or they can hang around the office and party, pump up the music. Yeah.
Now, I hear there's one or two stories that might have involved some ambulances after these Friday events. Is there any that you might want to share with
Not
people?
after those Friday events. I think it's mainly me that's been in the ambulance. Cliff, my co-founder, has actually been to hospital from our Christmas party. But I've got two ambulance stories. One is the day before we were launching, so this was a Saturday, we were going crazy, polishing everything, making sure it all worked. And at 8 p.m, I decided to go home, and I ride a lot. I cycle around the city, and I was riding home, going down a hill, and a taxi just came across me and stopped. And I hit the bonnet, went over, was unconscious for a few seconds, woke up face down, blood kind of pouring out of my mouth. So jumped in the ambulance for that one. Cliff came along for the ride because he was just around the corner at the office.
So just on that, how did that impact your launch strategy?
We still launched.
You still launched?
I was in the office the next day, looking a bit less good looking than I look now, but you know, otherwise fine. It was mainly just a lot of scratches and blood and a chipped tooth. Yeah, so we managed to get the launch out, and it went fairly well. Then my second ambulance story happened about a month ago. So we were in Manila. We just opened a new office there because we were working out of a co-working space there, and there was like 10 people in a room for 2. So we thought it was about time to get an actual office there. So we're opening that. We had the party. And then on the Saturday, we all decided to go to the beach. And it was half an hour before I had to go to the airport to go home. Went for a beach volleyball serve, dislocated my shoulder. Had to go to the hospital, and on the way to the airport, get it put back in, but it all worked out. I made my plane.
Jeez, that is absolute dedication. Now, before I guess we sort of finish up tonight, what would be, I guess, the biggest learnings you've had? I mean, you've had a very interesting, I think, career to date, and I think Canva's just going to continue to do great and wonderful things. I mean, what's probably the top 3, I guess, biggest learnings or observations that I guess you'd love to share with everyone here?
I think definitely the top one that you can take anywhere, any company, is the importance of the team and building the team, and how important it is to have great people working around you. Not just great people, but great people that you work well with. There's a lot of great people in the world, but whether they fit into your team is a different question. And it's really, particularly when you're a fast-growing startup, it's often tempting to just take someone who looks good on paper, but mightn't necessarily be a great fit for your company. But ultimately, that's going to end in tears. So it's always better to wait for exactly the right person, someone who has great skills and also buys into your vision and can help the company achieve what it wants to achieve. So that would be lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 for me personally has been how unimportant design is. So as a designer, this is kind of a hard thing to realise. Don't get me wrong, design is important, but designers tend to think that design is all that matters. And that's something that we thought on Fluent. It was all about the experience and how wonderful the experience was, and how people were going to love using our application. Problem is, when you do that, you neglect to pay yourself a wage or figure out how the company can actually run more than 6 months. So figuring out that business aspect in harmony with the product and the design is vitally important if you actually want to make a company, not just a product. Probably the third biggest thing I would have to say is partnering with the right people at the start.
Okay.
So having a great team around you is important, but like that seed team, the people that you call your founders and you want to build the company with, making sure that you all complement one another and work well together and communicate well together. I think that's vital to the product, it's vital to the company, and it's vital to the culture of the company. Because essentially you're like the base template from which the entire company grows. So having that right at the start enables you to grow a great company.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for sharing those insights, Cam, and I hope everyone here got something out of Cam's background, experiences, learnings, and could take that away and apply it, I guess, to your own journey. So thanks very much, Cam.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.